What is up, YouTube? This is Fable Grimro. Today I'm going to give you guys another Cardfight Vanguard deck profile. I've been trying to focus on this game a little bit more recently, and this is sort of, I've been messing around a lot with the Angel Feather clan. They're a clan in Vanguard, obviously based around angels, focused a lot on gaining power and effects when you get damaged. And when Set 9 came out, they came out with a new boss monster, Crimson Impact Metatron. And I've been messing around with her, giggity, a bit. And so far I'm really liking how she runs and how this deck runs. She's one of those cards where she has card support around her. She has a superior ride, so essentially it's like a special summon for you Yu-Gi-Oh players, but you pretty much get to ride her a turn early. But she's also very good on her own as a unit, so this build that I have right now is the superior ride version, focus on getting her out as quickly as possible and gaining card advantage that way. But you can also use her as a standalone unit, which is probably later when some other cards come out. I might switch to that. I was messing around with that before. But let me give you guys the deck list, or let me give you guys the deck as it is right now. First off, your starter is Crimson Heart Nahas. She is sort of what makes the superior ride go. I'll come back to her in a bit when I get to the other two units, but she's your forerunner, your basic forerunner Vanguard, or starting Vanguard. Trigger lineup: 4 Rampage card and 4 critical hit, so 8 critical triggers. 4 Fever Therapy Nurse, the new draw trigger. She has a very useful ability of where, while she's in the damage zone, you can just flip her face down and give one of your Angel Feather Vanguards plus 3,000 power. And of course, Sunny Smile, your 4 heal triggers. Sunny Smile also has another very useful ability. She's like a Lozenge Magus clone, where she is also a forerunner, so she can be used as a starting Vanguard if you so want to. But when she boosts a unit, she's only 3,000 power. She gains another 3,000 power, but then she gets put back into the deck at the end of the turn. So as a booster, she's okay. And then you're able to recycle her back into the deck to possibly check another one to come up later. So that's my trigger lineup. Grade 1 lineup: 4 Crimson Mind Baruch. Like the draw trigger, Fever Therapy Nurse, she has the same damage zone effect where you can put her face down into the damage zone and then give an Angel Feather plus 3,000 power. Four, Thousand Ray Pegasus, quite possibly the most important of the grade 1s because this is your big booster. Thousand Ray, she's a 7,000 power grade 1, which is pretty standard, but she gets an additional 2,000 power every time a card is put into your damage zone. So the way that Angel Feathers play is they're all about manipulating your damage zone, so it becomes an extension of your hand pretty much. And so you're able to swap cards from your hand to the damage zone and back, or with Metatron from the field to your damage zone. And that allows the Pegasus to get extremely huge boosts. 2 Doctroid Micros. This is your self-damager. It's only a 6,000 booster, but you can counterblast 1 to pretty much put the top card of your deck into the damage zone, and then at the end of your turn you can choose a card from your damage zone, put it back into your deck. So for that turn, you pretty much give yourself a damage. You have to be somewhat careful with this card in that, unlike some of the other effects, when you switch out the damage, this just gives you a damage. So if you're at 5 damage, use this effect, you're at 6 damage and you lose. So you have to be careful. But the reason why this card is played is because of my primary Vanguard Metatron is a limit break. And this can possibly go from 3 to 4 damage, or get another card into your damage zone that you can then swap that out with Metatron or another skill, and then at the end of the turn, it goes back. So, a 2 of, it's pretty nice. I run 2 Clutch Rifle Angels, as this is sort of the clan's like 10,000 booster. As long as you have, when he boosts, as long as you have more damage than your opponent, or equal damage than your opponent, which ideally you want to have always, he gains an additional 4,000 power. So he's your 10,000 booster. He's the guy that you would want supporting, when he boosts a Vanguard, I'm sorry. So he's the guy that you would want behind Metatron. So with him and Metatron additional skills, so she's a 13 attacker plus 10, so you have a 23 attacker, plus the damage zone effects that you flip and get 3,000, you're going to have a consistent 26 attacking Vanguard. So 2 Clutch Rifles as your Vanguard supporter, and of course 4 of the Perfect Guard, Pure Keeper Requiel. Some people cut Requiel to 3 just because of this deck. She can be sort of like a dead card in hand at times if you don't have the card advantage, and also because of the manipulation with your damage, and you can just swap out 1 for your damage into your hand. People find that, 4 is too cloggy, just run 3. But I'm still running 4 because, if it is cloggy, I can just call it to my damage zone, or just send it to my damage zone. And with a lot of the break rides and cross rides, and the very, very powerful Vanguards that are running around right now, I definitely need 4 Perfect Guard, because I'll explain a little bit more in depth later, but the key to this deck is knowing when to guard and when to take damage, because you want to have damage, you need to have damage for this deck to work, and more than likely you're always going to be pushing yourself to 5 damage every game. But that could be very tricky if your opponent top decks like critical triggers. So I've had it where, like, oh, I'm at 3 or 4 damage, and I'm gonna let this Vanguard attack go through, and then they top a critical trigger, and I'm like, oh, I lost, whoops. Or some of the other units that gain additional criticals, like your Dayushas and stuff like that. They can be very tricky because there's always a threat of having 3 or 4 damage put on you in one attack. So you have to be very careful when to guard, and that's why I run 4 of the Perfect Guards still. Grade 2 lineup: Crimson Drive Aphrodite. She is the other part to the Superior Ride. She has the same skill as the Draw Trigger and as the Grade 1 Crimson, in that you can flip her down into the damage zone, and your Angel Feather Vanguard gets plus 3,000. I'll come back to her and how the Superior Ride works in a moment. 4 Love Machine Gun No CL. Unlike the other popular Angel Feather build that's Shamshiel, which still uses this card, but it's not as focused, this card is sort of your ideal grade 2, in that you want to keep calling her with the damage zone manipulation. So you would, call her to rear guard, swap her out with Metatron skill to the damage zone, and then bring her back. And then you're able to use her effect of swapping a card in your hand from the damage zone when she's placed on rear guard twice per turn. And that way, while you still have your Pegasus rear guards out, they would gain 6,000, 8,000 boosts just off of that. So she's very key to sort of the combo with the deck. 3 million ray Pegasus. I was running 4. I cut it to 3 just because of space and sort of like the winning image of like how I want the board set up. It's not as imperative that I have like multiples of these guys out, but it's the same effect as the grade 1000 ray, except it's a grade 2. So every time a card is placed into your damage zone, it gets 2000 power. So you can potentially get some insane boosts with the way this deck goes. So let me explain the Superior Ride real quick. You have your starting Vanguard, Crimson Nahas. You would then call, any grade 1 of your choosing, except for the Crimson Mind Baruch. So you have your Nahas, call a grade 1, move Nahas to rear guard, call Baruch. Now, Nahas' skill is, while you have the grade 2 Crimson Drive Aphrodite as your Vanguard, you can use Nahas' skill to move her and a Baruch from your rear guard into your soul, and then you're able to Superior call Crimson Impact Metatron, who is your main Vanguard. And, of course, I run 4 of her, as well as 2, the Phoenix Calamity Flames, who is essentially a grade 3 version of the Pegasus, which is why I'm only running 3 Pegasus, because I'm only running and 2 Calamity Flames. I'm only running 6 grade 3s, as it's a little less than what most decks run, but because of the Superior Ride, because of all of the damage exchanging that I can do, I rarely have a problem of riding grade 3s ever. And in fact, even 6 can be cloggy at times, because I don't want them in my hand, and even if it's less than ideal, I can just send to my damage zone, but it's not ideal. So, and Phoenix is also something that, while she's okay as a Vanguard, she's more of the rear guard grade 3. So I'll run 2 of her and then 3 million ray, because they're vying for the same spot. Now let me explain Crimson Impact Metatron. First off, when she attacks a Vanguard, she gets plus 3,000 power, so I believe, as I said before, she's a 13k attacker by herself. Her Limit Break 4, Counterblast 1, choose 2 of your Angel Feather rear guards, and put them into your damage zone. And then you can choose 2 face-up Angel Feathers from your damage zone, and call them to rear guard. You can only use this once per turn. Now, what that will do is, let me give you sort of like the ideal field, let's say. So you would want either Phoenix or Million Ray, a No Seal, 2,000 rays as your main supporters, or even another 1,000 ray there if you want, and then probably like a clutch rifle back here. So what you would do is, this is like your ideal field right here, and you have your Million Ray or your Phoenix here, because they pretty much occupy the same slot. Is you have your 2 main supporters and 1,000 ray, your Love Machine Gun, your Metatron is your main Vanguard, your booster, and then your your boosting, or your Pegasus Calamity, and then your Pegasus boosters. Now you would call the Love Machine Gun, swap out a card in your hand, they become 9,000 boosters, this becomes another 2,000 to this right here. Metatron skill, you would counterblast one card from your damage zone, swap out two, so we'll say these two, because these are the two that you won't get a power boost. Put them in your damage zone, and then call whatever units you want to. Preferably, one has to be another love machine gun, and then, another clutch rifle if you so choose to. And then these two would get an additional 4,000 because 2 cards are put into your damage zone. So far 3 cards have been put into your damage zone, and then you get love machine guns effect again, where you get to swap from your hand to your damage zone. So that's 4 cards right there from your that were put into your damage zone this turn. But yet you still have the same number of cards in your damage zone because of all the swapping. So your 1,000 rays and your million rays / Calamity Flame would get an 8,000 power boost, making you have insanely powerful rear guards. And this is on top of your Aphrodite, your Baruch, your Fever Therapy nurses that you're going to want in the damage zone, and then you're going to want to turn them face down to give power to Metatron. So she easily becomes a 26, 29, 32 attacking Vanguard that way. So the whole point of Metatron, well, most decks try to power up the Vanguard. Metatron is more about powering up the rear guards, so that way you're attacking with consistently with 21 plus, 26 plus 1,000 columns every turn, because you have these huge boosters that are just gaining power every turn. And then you can just keep doing this with Metatron every turn, and then just keep pressuring with these huge columns. Okay? So something I've said before with Metatron is that with this deck you really need to know, you really need to be mindful of your hand advantage as well as the cards in your damage zone. So you really have to sort of micromanage what's going on. The downside to the superior call is that you're losing the 2 units, but you sort of gain the advantage of A, getting the Vanguard that you need to make the deck work, and B, you're able to start twin driving potentially while your opponent is still at grade 1 if you're going first. So while your opponent's at grade 1 and grade 2, you already have your grade 3 Metatron out on the field. Now, the downside to this speed is that you don't immediately... sometimes you might immediately not have the 4 damage, so sometimes you just have to twin drive, just get some advantage, and then just take damage as it comes. And sometimes taking damage can be a pain, as I said before, is if your opponent starts topping critical triggers, which every deck seems to run 8 critical triggers or 12 critical triggers, or you're going against a deck like Dayusha or something that will get extra criticals, or even things like Nova Grapplers that will stand and get extra attacks. You have to be very mindful about how much damage you're taking, because if you take too much damage and you're losing advantage and you don't have the cards in hand to block, then you're going to lose. So you have to be very mindful about what's going on the field, what's going on in your damage zone, what's going on in your hand. Metatron, I find, unlike Shamshiel, which is a very defensive deck, Metatron is very offensive oriented, as you get your huge column boosts. The Superior Ride adds a little bit of speed to the deck. It's not terribly. I mean, it's not terribly inconsistent, but it's a lot better when you get the Superior Ride off. If you miss it, then it's not the worst thing in the world. You just regular ride the Metatron, and at that point, it's fine. The downside to Metatron herself is that she's only a 10k Vanguard, so she's pretty open to attack, which, as I said before, isn't the worst thing in the world, because sometimes you want to attack. You just have to be very mindful about guarding and how much damage you're taking. Okay? So far, this deck has been amazing for me. I wasn't running the Superior Ride version before, and it was doing okay, but I would just get punished by heavier hitting decks, or I just I wouldn't have the Metatron because it was a lot harder for me to ride Metatron without the Superior Ride. But when I switched to the Superior Ride, first off, I was able to get Metatron out a lot more consistently because and a lot earlier too because of the Superior Ride, and then I had this added speed element where I would be twin driving a turn or two before my opponent would. So I would have so many cards in hand, and even against playing, a friend of mine has a Dayusha deck, and I was playing against her, and she was getting all her critical triggers and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, that's fine because right now you're on grade 1 and I have a grade 3 out right now, and before we even get to grade Dayusha, I'm going to beat you. So that was a pleasant surprise. So far this deck's been working very well for me. I might switch it out when set 11 comes out, which we're apparently getting a little bit early, and we get the Celestials. And while the Celestials are sort of more beatdowny as a deck, there is one card of theirs that I absolutely want for this deck, and that's the Candle Celestial. Sario, I think her name is. And pretty much what she does is she's able to place a card. She's like your self-damager, but she's able to place it from the deck into your damage zone, so you pretty much get to put whatever card you want to into your damage zone. And that helps a lot with your damage manipulation, your field manipulation, because you pretty much get... It's pretty much like a tutor. You get to take whatever card you want, put in your damage zone, use your no-seal, use your Metatron, use those skills, and get whatever card you need. So it's very good. Now, I also want to say that the Metatron build is also a bit different than the Shamshale build, as I've said this before, in that Metatron, as I said, is offensive, Shamshale is very defensive, where she's more focused on gaining power on your opponent's turn, so they won't hit you as much. Metatron is all about gaining power on your turn with her limit break. So Shamshale builds have a really hard time of gaining sort of like the necessary numbers on your turn, the attacking power, because it's a very offensively weak deck, but it's a lot stronger defensively because of Shamshale's boost whenever you take damage. And then you also run the grade 1 no-CL, the Battle Cupid, that lets you damage swap when she's put on the Guardian Circle. So that's sort of like the mindset of what you want from Metatron, is instead of this more traditional defensive Angel Feathers, this is an extremely, extremely offensive deck. So that's sort of the mindset you want to go in with this. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you like about it, what I should possibly change. I'm still gonna be messing with this deck a little bit, and I'm gonna update it as new stuff comes out. But right now, I'm really liking how it's running. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out, YouTube.